Hello and welcome to British English with Alexandre. Welcome wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Onwards and forwards with another British English grammar lesson. We're moving on now to Unit 16 of our excellent, our wonderful advanced grammar in use with a self-study reference and practice book for advanced learners of English from Cambridge University. This is by Martin Hewings. Okay, before we get started, please, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel to help it improve so we can help English learners and English speakers all over the world to improve their grammar, their pronunciation, connected speed, all the things that are related to the language, so you can bring it we can bring it to the highest level of English. We're talking about pronunciation, we're reading out loud, we're learning new words and sentences, we're learning word stress, sentence stress, all the things through only one exercise, believe me. Okay, without any further ado, let's go on with the lesson. Today, we're talking about Unit 16. Specifically, we're gonna be talking about modal verbs, modal and semi-modal verbs. Will, as we've already learned in another lesson about the future, in that case is used as a modal verb, so it has a different application. We're not necessarily considering the future time, but we're gonna be talking about will, would, and used to. Now notice how I pronounce that. We spell it U-S-E-D-T-O. Used to. Used to. But at the end of used, there's a t sound, and following that t sound, we've got another t sound. So we smash the sounds together, and we pronounce only one t sound. Sound. So it gets used to, used to, used to, not used to, not used to, but used to. Okay, remember that. Now let's go on. This is section A of the lesson. We're initially talking about will and would. Will and would. Okay. We can use will for the present. Pay attention to that. We're not referring to the future as a modal verb. We can use will. We can. It's a possibility. We can use will for the present and would for the past. To talk about, first, characteristic behavior or habits. For example, every day Dan will come home from work and turn on the TV. So this is a characteristic behavior or a habit. Every day Dan will come home from work and turn on the TV. We might interpret the verb to come as if it was in the present. Actually it is. Every day Dan will come home from work and turn on the TV. Every day, this is a habit. Another example, at school, she would always sit quietly and pay attention. In that case, we're using would for the past. But it was a habit, a characteristic behavior of her. At school, she would always sit quietly and pay attention. Another characteristic now. We can use will for the present and would for the past to talk about things that are or were always true. For example, cold weather will kill certain plants. Cold weather will kill certain plants. So we're talking about things that are or were always true. It's a certain fact. It's our reality. cold weather will kill certain plants. Another example, during the war, people would eat all kinds of things that we don't eat now. Again, during the war, people would eat all kinds of things that we don't eat now. Observation. For the use of your will to talk about the future, you might see Unit 9, which we've already talked about. Okay, let's move on. We don't use will or would in this way to talk about a particular occasion. Compare. Each time I gave him a problem, he would solve it for me. Again, each time I gave him a problem, he would solve it for me. So it was a habit, a characteristic behavior. And last night I gave him a problem and he solved it for me. Not he would solve it. Compare. We're not talking about characteristic behavior or habits. It was a singular past event. It was a particular occasion. Last night I gave him a problem and he solved it for me. It's in the past simple. We don't use would in that case. Last night I gave him a problem and he solved it for me. It wasn't a habit. A habit is like the previous example. Again, each time I gave him a problem, he would solve it for me. However, moving on. However, we can use will not, won't. Pay attention to that. W-O-N-T. We pronounce it won't. 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 This is the abbreviation for will not. We say won't. Don't take very much care in relation to that pronunciation, because, for example, if we consider the verb to want, which is to desire something, you might confuse the verb to want with won't. Won't, 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 won't. In that case, it is won't, which is the future in the negative form. Will not, won't. Okay, moving on. However, we can use will not, won't, and would not, wouldn't, wouldn't. In either case, compare. He would walk the 5 miles to his place of work. Again, he would walk the 5 miles to his place of work. This is characteristic behavior again. We might also say he wouldn't walk the 5 miles to his place of work. This is in the negative way. We're talking about characteristic behavior, both in the affirmative way and in the negative form way, whatever. And now, she wouldn't say what was wrong when I asked her. She wouldn't say what was wrong when I asked her. Okay. Let's move on to section B now. In speech, we can stress will or would to criticize people's characteristic behavior or habits. For example, she just won't do the washing up when I asked her. She just won't do the washing up when I ask her. So it's criticizing people's characteristic behavior habits. In that case, she just won't do the washing up when I ask her. We can stress that won't. She just won't do the washing up when I ask her. Another example. I was happy when Ryan left. Sorry about that. I was happy when Ryan left. He would talk about people behind their backs. Again, I was happy when Ryan left. He would talk about people behind their backs. we might emphasize that would. He would talk about people behind their backs. We stress those words, those verbs. Okay, moving on. We can also express disapproval of something they have done using will. For example, I feel sick. Well, if you will it so much, I'm not surprised. I feel sick. Well, if you will it so much, if you will it so much, I'm not surprised. Okay, moving on to section C. We can use will to draw conclusions or state assumptions about the things that are the case now. For example, Marina will be at home by now. Let's go and see her. Marina will be at home now. Let's go and see her. So we're drawing conclusions or we're stating assumptions about things that are the case now. Another example, you will know that Ewan and Lucy are engaged. I assume you already know. You will know that Ewan and Lucy are engaged. I assume you already know that. Okay, let's move on to section D. We're talking about would and used to now. Okay, let's move on. When we talk about repeated events in the past that don't happen now, we can use either would or used to plus infinitive. However, we can use would only if the time reference is clear. Compare. We used to play in the garden. We used to play in the garden. Not we would play. Time reference not given. We would play in the garden. And another example, whenever we went to my uncle's house, we would play in the garden. So there's a time reference here, so we can use both ways. Whenever we went to my uncle's house, we would play in the garden, or whenever we went to my uncle's house, we used to play in the garden. Moving on. We can use used to, but not would, when we talk about past states that have changed. The factory used to be over there. The factory used to be over there. And didn't you used to have red hair? Didn't you used to have red hair? Moving on. We don't use either used to or would when we say exactly how many times in total something happened, how long something took, or that a single event happened at a given past time. So, for example, we visited Switzerland 4 times during the 1990s. Not we would visit or we used to visit. We visited Switzerland 4 times during the 1990s. Another example, she went to Jamaica last month. Not she would or she used to go to Jamaica. Sorry, Jamaica. We pronounce it Jamaica. She went to Jamaica last month. Okay, moving on to section E. This is actually the last section of that unit about modal verbs. Now we're considering would and will have plus past participle. So we might use would plus past participle or will have plus past participle. Okay, we use those verbs to talk about an unreal past situation, that is, an imaginary situation or a situation that might have happened in the past but didn't. We use would have plus past participle. For example, I would have been happy to see him, but I didn't have time. Again, I would have been happy to see him, but I didn't have time. However, to say that we think a past situation actually happened, we use will have plus past participle. For example, as it was cloudy, few people will have seen last night's lunar eclipse, rather than would have seen. Again, as it was cloudy, few people will have seen last night's lunar eclipse. That's an affirmative sentence about the past. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Remember, we've considered Unit 16 where will, would and used to are considered modal and semi-modal verbs, so these verbs have different meanings when they're used in the language, as I've already explained. Specifically, just to reiterate, will for the present and would for the past. Those are different applications of those modal and semi-modal verbs. We're not talking necessarily about the future, right? Remember, will for the present and would for the past. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Please remember to share, subscribe, most importantly, so we can improve the channel, we can help it grow and help English learners, English students, English lovers all over the world. I hope you've enjoyed it. Cheers.